This podcast is brought to you by JMC Academy, Australia's leading creative education provider. With degrees in film, acting, entertainment management, design, music, audio engineering, animation, and game design, JMC has a course for every type of creative. Search JMC Academy to learn more. Filmmaking duo Clark and Jim Weir are a lesson in what can be created on a shoestring budget if required, and how sometimes the most fascinating pieces of work can come from limitations. Perhaps it's because when you're already thinking outside the box, you are bound to create something that also sits outside of cinematic norms. Or perhaps it's because Jack and Jim share a rare creative exchange that they've been able to turn into one of the most thought-provoking psychological thrillers in recent memory. The film Birdeater is Jack and Jim's first feature film. It's about bride-to-be Irene, who is invited to her own fiancé's bucks party, but when uncomfortable details about their relationship are exposed, the night takes a feral turn. It's out in cinemas later this month, but we are very fortunate to have with us the two creators of Birdeater. Welcome, Jack Clark and Jim Weir.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, the trailer still does things to me. So it has stayed with me. It is one of those films that you keep thinking about. And I have to admit, when I was backstage with them before in the green room, I was like, can you please put me out of my misery? I need to know all these things.
We didn't really, though.
No, you didn't. No. And that's okay, because that was the point. But let's go back. Let's go back to the inception story of you two. You know, how did you get into filmmaking? And then also, what drew you to one another? Because you were studying at Afters together, right?
Yeah. Afters is where we met. We worked on each other's short films all through, film school. I think in terms of what attracted us to each other, I think we were very happy to give brutal critique to each other's writing and each other's work. At our film school in particular, everyone was kind of overly positive all the time, which is really great. It's great to be really supportive of your peers. But I think me and Jack knew we weren't good yet and we wanted to be good. So we were really good at taking feedback from each other. Had a few formative film watching experiences together. So when we finished film school, we started a production company the year after we graduated.
There's a difference between, that constructive criticism and then just having a go, right? So there must have been a way that you communicated it that made you feel very comfortable and understanding that it was a critique to help you do better.
Well, it was often, because we were looking at similar films or source material, and we could see early you're often just trying to mimic something you've seen. And so I would watch Jim watch a film, then go do his own short project and see that he's just mimicking something that he's just watched. And then, there's a gap in between it. So it's kind of looking at that and seeing where did you miss the mark. And I think it was just that honesty was appealing to us because it was outside of the rubric or outside of the school's mode of sort of feedback. It was just helpful to have somebody that you could really get the truth from here.
Well, that's how you grow, right? When you're put to the test like that. And that actually makes me think of the fact that Birdeater was created with this micro budget that was stemmed from some Facebook posts that you saw. Can you tell us about how it came about and how you were kind of put to the test in a way with this micro budget?
Yeah. I saw a Facebook post from this producer in Sydney who was just starting a production company called Breathless Films, and they wanted to finance 5 micro budget features over the course of a year, which is just kind of an unheard of model in Australia. No one's financing micro budget features here. So we just jumped on it. We just had the initial idea for what became Birdeater, and we met with them and they really liked our idea. And we signed an option agreement with them kind of within a month of having the idea. So we just were very lucky with timing and just kind of jumped at the chance to make our first movie.
But what was the micro budget? How much are we talking?
Well, it's still ongoing because at the post, when you're at a really, really small budget level, small costs in post are big costs. So we're still kind of adding it up, but it was only a couple $100,000 Australian, and we didn't have any access to state funding bodies or Screen Australia, no finishing funds, nothing like that, because it's quite hard to access that for a first film.
But we also had a bunch of deferred payments on our film. So we have the amount of money that we spent, and then we have, what it says on the spreadsheet is our budget, and there's quite a big gap there because it's a lot of imaginary money that people might get if the film makes any money.
Yeah.
But I think Microbudget is under 100,000, which is initially what we thought we could do it on. But
no, it's not. It's under 2 million at the actor.
Microbudget.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
A microbudget for a feature film is under $2 million.
Is it?
So we're way under that.
Okay, yeah, we are microbudget.
Yeah, we're very far under that. But yeah,
it's just pulled off a miracle, basically.
Well, yeah, I think we have colleagues at Afters who have gone kind of the official route and going with the development funding at Screen Australia and things, and they're still kind of in the midst of that. Even if they had seen success, even if their projects had gotten off the ground, they're still kind of in the early pre-stage 10 years later. And we sort of didn't want to get not caught in that, but we knew we wanted to have something quick because we want to generate a lot of films. We want to make a lot of material. So we just want to sort of get momentum rolling, I think, on a larger body of work.
Well, you've proven that it's doable too. I imagine there's a few people circling you now going, oh, if they can do that for a couple $100,000, let's kind of zone in. I know you're working on another project already now, but we'll get into that later. But what I'm most fascinated by is that it's very rare that we get to sit here with two people who have not just written and created the film, but also directed it. So what actually inspired Birdeater? Was it a conversation? Was there a person? Do you know someone like Charlie? The kind of struggling Christian, not so Christian character in the film. Where did it come from?
We know all of the characters in some way, and a lot of them are our own impulses, kind of like magnified and turned into the most kind of awful versions. But the first idea was about a relationship with separation anxiety that we wanted to separate at one point in the story to see what would happen. And then everything else kind of fell around that. So it became it was originally just a relationship where there was attachment issues, and then it extended into an emotionally abusive relationship, and then it extended into the premise, which was that this all happens at a bucks party, which came with its own kind of genre connotation. So it was really sort of this unfolding thing where it wasn't all at once. It was just step by step. So we really only started with two people where we knew that their relationship would have an interesting dynamic, whether or not anybody else was there. And then we kind of filtered in these ideas, and we were inspired by other low-budget films, but didn't try to look too closely at other micro-budget features because they can often be limited by... They kind of conceptualize at a micro-budget as well, to a point where, they have to be locked down, they have to only be two people in a room, they sort of start to feel and look the same. We wanted to sort of throw that out the window to start with and then try and rein it in once, practicalities became a question. But yeah, it wasn't all at once. It was a slow thing, but we knew it was about a couple.
When you say it was about a couple and it kind of started with the separation anxiety, is that a relationship that either of you were in or you'd witnessed?
Again, it's like pieces. We had experiences ourselves, but also close friends because this film eventually seems to be more about people outside of that relationship looking in. So it was our experiences trying to interpret other friends' relationships. I think that was where it mostly came from, is how does another relationship appear to you, and how do you feel powerless or empowered to stop that relationship or aid it or whatever, or abet it. So that was
Yeah, there's that really fascinating scene, and I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there is a scene where the relationship is discussed, and for the two people in the relationship, they're discussing it as if it's a normal thing, and then for everyone outside, they're going, wait, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
You what now? So, and I think I've had that experience too, when a friend has discussed her relationship, and, on one side, that's completely normal to them. No relationship will ever be the same, and what they accept may not be something that you accept. That's all up to your internal compass. But on the other end, there are some things that are a little bit more black and white. But you're not dealing with the black and white in Birdeater at all.
No. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's small details that balloon into something really personal to two people that over time can metastasize into this strange aspect of a relationship that isn't universal. And then when that gets aired out in public, how strange that can sound. And sometimes it is purely innocent. Sometimes it is just a way that two people relate to one another. They found a healthy kind of way to deal with something. Other times it isn't. So it was about presenting something that was somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Did you have to do a lot of research into psychological abuse and things like that?
Yeah, and our lead actress, Shabana, did a lot of her own research. She met with, I had like these ongoing conversations with 3 different women, a couple of whom had been in a similar kind of relationship with, coercive control and emotional abuse. And one of the women she was talking to was still in the relationship. Those were like huge resources for her, kind of grounding the performance. There were a few things we really wanted to avoid, like the perfect victim trope, the idea that like the victim needs to be likable for us to care about her plight. We talked a lot about how these women often aren't like the easiest to talk to, and they can be prickly, because why wouldn't you be prickly if you were in a relationship like that?
Yeah, and that part of their personality that isn't so clear cut is probably due to the abuse.
It's all part of the design. Yeah, like we had friends that we knew, and they would be guys who would eventually become quite shut off to help or assistance, that would not want to talk about the relationship, and it was as a design of the abuse. So in order to kind of reflect it accurately, you had to, as Jim's saying, like the need to also empathize with the person on an interpersonal level to also legitimize their victimhood is something we don't agree with. So, yeah.
There's a statement, one of your director statements, you said, Birdeater is an unapologetic look at how Australia's iconic masculine identity has become incompatible with contemporary gender politics. We all know that toxic masculinity is extremely harmful at every level, basically. But what you say here about gender politics, that part of the statement, I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, I think it's the way that men relate to each other as well. Like not only the idea of the classic Australian man, but also mateship and the way that he relates to other men, or mateship is as a male domain. And then how does that affect our national identity if our sort of the code in which we talk about friendship is largely about the way that men relate to one another? How does that imprison our men, and how does it also other people who aren't a part of that group? So we have 3 boys who are mates in the middle of this film, who share a lot of attributes. They look slightly similar. They're all kind of the same height. Like they feel homogenous, and everyone in the cast is in some way othered from that person, whether it's an ethnicity, like height, sexual preference, what country they're from, and it's all quite deliberate as a way to sort of separate them from this binding mateship, which also isn't helpful, isn't constructive to these men either. They're in their late 20s, and they've sort of lost their way with each other as well. So I think that it was about the Australian man, but broadly the way that Australian men find friends as well.
And the thought that's gone into that is so fascinating. When you break down those kind of dangerous archetypes that we've got across the Birdeater film. So you both wrote the film together. How did you split that work up?
We wrote the story together, and then Jack wrote the screenplay. So in terms of like the working relationship, we're kind of talking every day, and then Jack is going off for a portion of the day to write on his own. And that's kind of how we do it, constantly checking in.
We just kind of ramble for an hour or two, and then stop, and then that happens pretty much every day. It happens now, happens when the film stops. Talk about the next one. You just talk for a few hours. Not even really about the film, but you just chat, and then that's it. Yeah.
Did you learn anything about your own biases towards perhaps toxic masculinity as you're writing this, and as you're having these big long discussions about it. Did you call in the same way that you call each other out back when you were at Afters? Were you able to then call each other out in these conversations too?
Yeah, well, I think like a big thing in Birdeater is comedy. The fact that like Australian men can only really joke with each other. As soon as something serious comes up, you have to make a joke about it. You have to fall back into that. And I think me and Jack are fairly aware with also like how much we like that. We love that men are constantly making jokes. We're constantly making jokes as well. Like we
funny guys.
we fall into the same traps as the men we're trying to critique as well.
So yeah, rather than avoiding things, we would kind of encourage each other to lean into story aspects. Like where a joke would be most inappropriate, where it feels like we really shouldn't be going there. We try and find the humor in a situation because it feels quite honest. Because it does feel like that's the escape route for men, is to kind of, that's the exit door. If you can figure out a way to construe this into a joke, and we can bring the audience with us. That was kind of what we wanted to do. So we wanted to make the audience complicit in a lot of that humor that we were sort of self-conscious of.
Yeah.
You're sitting there going, wait, that's not funny. But they think, wait, do I need to find this funny? Am I the problem if I don't find this funny?
Yeah.
Is everyone laughing with me? What's going on?
Yeah, our favourite screenings are when we can hear like half the audience laughing and we can feel that the other half is like very uncomfortable.
That's
like
the right and the left, right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the other things that I love about Birdeater is that it's, very much set in current times, but there's none of this millennial stuff going on. You don't have iPhones and social media being part of the storyline. Why did you choose to make that a huge differentiator?
It's somewhat aspirational. I mean, we use our phones a lot. We wish we didn't. So it's almost like we want to present a world in which people like us are on screen and they have our frailties and they have our voice, but they're able to just sort of be in a room without using phones as kind of like a dramatic tool. It also meant that the film was not necessarily tethered in a time as well, so that it could feel like it speaks to something honest, later as well, rather than date it kind of immediately. Like once you bring phones and social media into the equation, it does sort of have a fairly rigid time stamp, which we didn't want to put on the film.
Yeah, and there was a larger thing of like we really wanted to make a movie about young people that felt, honest, but we didn't want it to be like a mumblecore film where it's characters.
Wait, what's mumblecore?
Mumblecore is like a type of film where it's usually young, like characters in their 20s who are like aimless, don't really know what to do with their lives, like Frances Ha a little bit. I love Frances Ha, but like that would be an example of a mumblecore film.
So I only know mumble rap, and I think that still fits the brief of mumble rap. They don't really know what they're saying or what's going on.
Ensembles of young 20-somethings just figuring it out, which is not to say that everyone in Birdeater has figured their shit out. They don't have it.
But they have very strong opinions.
Yeah.
And they have a very clear idea of who they are and what they want. And we think that's just far more dramatic. So I think
they meant no phones to us in some way. They meant that they weren't distracted, I think. They were just kind of present. Yeah.
I like that you say it's a bit aspirational too, because I do think that the generations coming up are probably looking at us millennials and going, I don't want to be so obsessed with my phone. I might want to unplug a bit.
You can kind of see it in, older filmmakers will represent us as attached to our phone, which we are, but it kind of means that I don't really like those people like on screen, I kind of reject it, and I'd rather see myself on screen just like as I am,
One of the other things I found really interesting is, you look at psychological thrillers that are kind of taking over, and I was thinking of, have you seen Midsummer? It's Midsummer. And it tells the story of toxic masculinity, and it delves into these fascinating themes, but it does so through violence and gore. It's very gory, and there's certainly a lot of scenes that are extremely confronting, whereas Birdeater doesn't rely on violence and there's no gore. And so talk me through why you made this psychological thriller. I know that it's dark comedy as well, but without the violence and the gore.
Well, I think it's largely just because that's what the story was. It was never a monster movie. It was never a slasher. There was never really. It's not like we wrote in violent scenes and then thought, oh no, let's get rid of all the violence.
We never really made the decision. It was that starting place where it was. This is a story about a couple that separates and then returns together. And then, it just never occurred to us. We're not particularly opposed to it. I mean, the stories we're developing now still involve violence, but I think you just have to be very mindful of the way the violence works with an audience. It kind of works in partnership with the way that they're interpreting the film. It also helps that this is the first film, so people don't really know what to expect. They don't have any kind of baggage with us. So it means you can definitely play with the implications of violence or the anticipation of some kind of explosion. Without necessarily going there, and you don't have to feel bad about it because you've never made a movie, so they can't really hold you to account,
But I love what you said about how, we don't really have the preconceived idea of what you two are about yet. When we're going into it and you can see the imagery and you can see the tension that's being built, we do expect violence to come out of that. There's so many moments where I was like, oh my God, this is the part where he does this, or this is going to get sickening. And it doesn't, because it's the psychological abuse that you want to.
I think it's that kind of that same feeling of adrenaline that you have when you're in a terrible social situation. We wanted to simulate that, which is your body anticipating violence. It's flooding your brain with adrenaline so that you can fight or flight, So, but that's just can be produced by a really uncomfortable conversation. So we kind of wanted to simulate that feeling.
And you really did it with the music too. So do you have an orchestra involved? And how did you get that kind of level of music with this micro-budget that you worked with as well? Talk us through that.
So our composer, his name's Andres Dominguez. We went to film school with him. He recorded pretty much the entire score in his bedroom, in his share house. There was maybe 5 musicians, a few of them who did multiple instruments. Our saxophonist played 4 or 5 different saxophones for the score. We gave him
recorded in his bedroom.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, it was
just invite the
so
opera
uncomfortable.
over.
I think doing the music for the film was almost the toughest part, because we were in this tiny room. Rather, me or Jack had to sit on a drum kit stool.
It was actually one of the only.
I couldn't do it.
It was actually one of the only parts of the process that we couldn't sit in on, because me and Jim are very hands-on and like to be really annoying and over everyone's shoulder. But because of the size of the room, we literally couldn't be there anymore, because
maybe that
quarter in.
Maybe that's why you chose.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Good, but but he went after he went from afters. He went to the conservatorium as well, so he had this kind of pool of great young musicians as well. But we wanted to use classical references as well. We wanted to have fairly ambitious classical score, just because it didn't feel contemporary. Because I think we have this idea that if you're referencing anything recent or anything contemporary, by the time it comes out, it's already going to be old news. The stuff now, it's because it takes so long to release a film anyway. So you should be looking at stranger, older things, because there's less eyes on it and people have forgotten what certain things feel like.
Yeah. Similar idea to avoiding social media and phones was also avoiding the classic droney ambient score, which is in kind of every independent film, because it's cheap.
And we've done it. We've done it.
Yeah, we have done it before. But we just wanted to avoid that. We didn't want it to look like an indie feature, and we didn't want it to sound like an indie feature. So a lot of our decisions just came back to that.
It's not going to be dated in any way, which is great. I don't think so. The micro-budget is not the only challenge that you had. You had a lot of challenges when you went on location.
Yes.
Tell us, was it La Nina that hit
one of those ones.
The shoot?
But we like to shoot on location just because it can afford you so much detail and texture that, building from scratch doesn't give you, or it's harder to achieve. But we found this beautiful little property in St Albans, which is just past Wiseman's Ferry. And when we were shooting there, it was the property was skirted by this dry riverbed, but because of this weather event whilst we were shooting. Days went by and this dry riverbed was filling. And then one day a dam let off all this overflow and we got stuck there. We were actually isolated on set. So we had to have like this emergency stop to filming and everybody had to bush bash, and it was just, terrible. After everybody made it out fine and we were still friends, but it was tough, and it meant that we were really aware during the first block, which took, blood, sweat and tears to raise finance for, to organise. Halfway through this very tough shoot, we found out we weren't going to get it all done this first time.
We couldn't go back. We couldn't film at this cottage anymore because there was no way to get there without crossing like a literal river.
So yeah, we knew we had to, just when we just got here, we knew we had to get all that money back again. Essentially, we were going to have to do this another time.
How much money did you lose?
We didn't lose the money so much as we just knew that we weren't going to get it all the first time around.
Yeah, well, we were losing money in that. In order to keep shooting, we had to just like all these random expenses came up, eating into our like small post budget. Like the road to set was quite like muddy, so we had to rent like 4-wheel drives for the cast and crew to be able to like travel to set safely. Initially, before it became a river, when it was just a low river, we bought like waders for everyone so they could like get to set without getting like their pants wet. And yeah, so we were supposed to finish filming the movie in a month. About halfway through that month, we couldn't go back to our like hero location, so we knew we weren't going to be able to finish the film. That month, we asked all the actors if they'd be willing to come back for reshoots. All but one of the actors was able to come back for reshoots.
You lost a character.
So we lost one of our characters.
Lost a character or lost an actor?
Lost an actor.
Lost an actor.
Okay, the character stayed.
So we knew we were going to have to recast them. We knew we had to throw out all of the scenes that we'd already filmed with them.
Was that a bummer? Because you would have, and sorry, which character was it?
Dylan.
So you'd probably had someone in mind for Dylan, and then newcomer comes through.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, I think Dylan's fascinating
Well,
as a character.
It ended up working fine. It was a lot of, it ended up working quite well because the rest of the ensemble had gotten so familiar with each other, and the character we're recasting needed to be kind of a disruptor to that friend group anyway. So it needed to have this surprising, unexpected quality to him as well. So if the rest of the cast had already filmed all these scenes, felt super comfortable with each other, and the remaining block was largely this character's scenes, it helped having like somebody new for that, somebody that they didn't quite have a handle on. So it meant that it was really fresh when they got onto set.
It's like life imitating art.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. And then how did you get back on track financially? Because that would have been a blow.
Just went around and kind of,
No, we, because you have to like book in kind of shoot dates for all these actors, because, their availabilities were filling up. So we kind of gave ourselves like a 2-week shooting block, and it was 6 months away. Like, we can get money.
Just picked a date.
Yeah, we just picked a date. We're like, yeah, we'll be able to get the financing we need in 6 months. And then
we told everybody, yep, it's definitely going ahead.
It's definitely going ahead. 3 weeks before the shoot, we still had like $0 in the bank account. We hadn't raised any more finances because all of the production companies that had given us a little bit of money, they didn't want to give us any money.
Because it's hard to tell them like, oh, we just kind of stuffed it up first time around, but this time it's gonna really you get a lot.
Really good for it this time.
Yeah. And Jack and I had like well and truly ran out of our own money at that point. And then it was an angel investor came in clutch like 2 weeks before we shot.
From where?
Anonymous source.
Yeah, sometimes they don't want to be there.
Like,
just like they distant network, but just like it took a lot. It wasn't an immediate option. Just like it took a lot of emailing, a lot of phone calls. Because some people, like a lot of people that want to invest in films, aren't even in the industry. They're people that are looking to be a part of arts, believe what you're doing. They're just kind of investors in various enterprises. It's
Yeah. But sometimes they don't want to be publicly known because they don't want like every, young filmmaker sending them emails. But yeah, it was a pretty random source.
Bless this angel investor. That is amazing.
But we were really, when the second block ended, we went for wrap drinks. I couldn't even afford my like schnitzel. Like my DOP paid for it, who he hadn't even paid as well. He just did it because he really trusted us in the project. But
And didn't he get COVID during the...
he did get COVID. Yeah, he got COVID on the first week back.
Yeah, so Jack shot for a week. Was
Did you expect to be the DOP?
No, I did not. Well, I was, yeah.
See, this is so fascinating to me because you did have hurdle after hurdle, but yet I wonder, and do you think that it ended up feeding into what was the final project? Like, did it actually help you?
I will say...
Or are you like, no,
I
it
will
would have been way easier.
the scenes that we shot in our second shooting block when we weren't worried about the flood were better. I think like the amount of stress we had in our first shooting block wasn't particularly helpful to the creative process, I would say.
But it gives the film a very kind of unique visual flavor as well. Just because we're like blending multiple locations, you have to shoot it in kind of a strange way. We were already planning to do that, but some people are really baffled by the way the film looks. And a little part of me thinks that's just because of how strange our shooting block was, that we were kind of mixing and matching locations. So it has this sort of odd flavor.
And did all of that kind of test your friendship and your relationship at all? Because, you know, you've got these two very incredible creative minds, but you're very different in the way that you are creative. And so I wonder, you know, how that showed up. What kind of conflicts did you have based on being creative, being like on the same level in terms of being co-directors, co-writers?
Well, we learned pretty early on that we couldn't present any kind of stress we were feeling to the crew because we had quite a bad day. Only a few days in, this is before any of this bad stuff, actual bad stuff happened. Like our camera broke, and this was for like the opening credit shot. So it's like the title drop, and we felt it was really important. We had this exact kind of dolly move we wanted. We got so many takes. We got like 27 takes or something, but we're like 28th is when it's really going to come together. But the camera broke. And we just, you know, hung our head in our hands and complained. And everybody felt that, and the whole sort of energy of the set dropped. And we decided after that we just had to present like a front that we weren't concerned, and it was always going to work out. And it ended up having a really positive effect on the crew, because something that you don't really learn when you're deciding to be a director, or when you're first doing it in film school, is quite how much of a figurehead you are for the tone and for the environment of the set. That you essentially, when you get to a feature stage, even if it's a micro-budget feature, you're essentially the CEO of a small business. Like, you register the film as a business. You're essentially a CEO, and you're in charge of the tone of the workday with all of these employees, and they're all kind of in constant interaction with you. And if your energy is low, their energy is going to be low as well, because you're the one who's supposed to be the most dedicated to this project, the one who's working every single hour of the day. All their money is in it. And if you're not really feeling it on the day, why is the, you know, third rung of the camera team who's you know, first time on a feature, like, how are they going to respond to that? You know, it's really important that you project the type of set that you want to see around you.
Yeah, and because we were able to be, you know, so positive in our first shooting block when things were going so badly, it meant when we got to our second shooting block and our DOP had COVID and Jack had to step in as the DOP, our cast was just like, oh yeah, okay, we'll be fine, because we kind of overcome so much at that point. They just trusted us to be able to make something work.
We said that on the first day we had the group, the first AD called the meeting and was talking about COVID and breaks and stuff. Oh, by the way, Roger's not here. The guy's shooting the film, he's not here, but Jack will do it, don't worry. And they're just, you know, okay. Just because they're used to it by that point. Yeah.
There's also something to be said for, you know, choosing that positivity. You know, like you said, you've got to set the tone. So in choosing that tone to be relaxed and everything's going to be fine, and the flow-on effect of that being that everything feels relaxed and everything will be fine.
Yeah, we're just lying.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Then you made it.
But the second block did end up being, apart from Roger's COVID thing, it ended up being like pretty smooth.
Yeah.
I think as a result of developing like our understanding of how a feature shoot should work as well. In the process of making our first feature, it was kind of like we were shooting a really small second feature after our first one because of that kind of 6-month break. Yeah.
Now, we are at JMC Academy and we do have some audience questions. But before we go to those, I know that you're working on another feature film together and you've wrapped up writing it already. What can you tell us about it?
Kind of, it's kicking around. So I've been writing it for 6 or 7 months and we're just trying to get like some attention on it. We're trying to get some early cast on it, but it's a Schoolies thriller. So it's
Schoolies thriller.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah.
My Schoolies was a Schoolies thriller.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. Did you go to Surfers Paradise? Were you on the Gold Coast?
No, I think we both did more the like isolated coastal town version of Schoolies, the kind of the house party Schoolies, which is the version of Schoolies that's going to be in our movie. But yeah, it's kind of our take on a coming of age film.
Oh, fun. It's all happening. All right, who has a question?
Hey everyone. My name's Ronaldo, and like I'm a huge fan of like horror films, and like I really love the work that yous are putting in, and it's really good. But I have a question I wanted to ask. What do you think the horror thriller genre is gonna go in like the foreseeable future for Australians in the industry?
Yeah, there does seem to be a kind of new wave of Australian horrors, like the Talk to Me thing. Everyone's pretty excited about Australian horror, Australian thriller. We don't know exactly where it's going to go, and we also don't spend too much time trying to anticipate where it's going to go. We're more kind of focused on our own films and our own stories we want to tell. One thing we have been thinking about is like grief horrors. You know how every horror film in the past 5-10 years is just like a grief allegory? We think there's going to be a new kind of grief horror wave. It'll be like something else horror, like relationship horror, or we're not sure. But I think there'll be something like that.
An animal horror, like Critter. We want critters to come back.
Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, it's the same idea as with like if you're trying to anticipate where the trend or where the next turn will be, that you will already be late by the time you get there. But it's often the sign of like a healthy indie landscape is when horrors and thrillers start to happen, because a horror film doesn't need to have expensive cast for people to go and see it. Like, because there's a contract that they'll be scared, that they know what sort of film they're signing up for. So if you're starting to see horror and thriller films, I think it's a good sign that eventually the indie community will be following after with other types of films as well.
The film industry, like especially in Australia, like everyone loves horror films. So I feel like it's become really popular recently in these years. And like I'm excited for these new films to come out soon, more horror films and thrillers to come out.
Yeah, at least anecdotally, we know maybe half a dozen filmmakers who are working on not necessarily horror, but like genre films. So I think we'll see more in the next few years.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for answering.
Hi guys, I'm Jade.
Hi.
This question's for the both of you. Birdeater certainly keeps its audience on the edge of their seat due to incredible tension and suspense, which you can see in the trailer. It's insane. Will this style of filmmaking continue to be present in your future endeavours? And how will the both of you describe your filmmaking style in more detail?
Yeah, we have like a slate of 3 films, including this one, so another 2 after this, that are all using suspense and thriller elements to very different effects. Like they're sort of using different genre combinations, but there's a suspense through line through all of them. And I think it's probably a young filmmaker thing, that it's like a maximalist thing, that you kind of want to be oppressive to the audience. You want to kind of make them feel as much as you can.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll grow out of it. But I think we talk about thriller rather than horror because it feels like it's adjacent to drama, that you can filter in drama through thriller films, or you can kind of Trojan horse it in. And certainly in conversations we've been having with, American companies or studios, they've become more and more comfortable with the idea of shooting in Australia if it has some kind of genre element, because international cinema, there's an appetite growing for international genre films. So, you know, like Korean thrillers, everybody knows what that is now, or sort of Kiwi comedies. Like, people are beginning to branch out to other national cinemas, and genre seems to be an easy way for new audiences to try things. So thriller is interesting to us for that kind of broader appeal sense as well.
Hi, my name's Alia. My question is again for both of you. So after having been a part of the creation of pretty impressive thriller shorts, what aspects or I guess kind of differences from making a feature film really stood out to you?
I think it's largely a stamina thing. It takes a lot more energy to make a feature. You're committing to full-time work for 2, 3, 4 years. Whether whilst a short is, a few months, you can bang it out. Shooting is just harder because it's just way more days. So yeah, it is largely like a stamina thing. Like, me and Jack made a point of trying to be in good shape before we shot the film, because we knew it'd be physically really draining to be on set and to be the most energetic person on set for an entire month. So we were trying to eat healthy and trying to run a lot before the shoot so we could be just so we could maintain that energy. And then in terms of story editing, it is kind of its own thing when you get to long form stuff. Something we learned whilst we were editing is just how much connective tissue is in a long form project. You can change a tiny thing in one scene and it will totally affect someone's reading of a later scene. We had test screenings where we said would be told this scene is has a lot of problems, this scene is not working, and then the next screening they'll be oh wow, you fixed that scene, that's amazing, but we actually didn't touch that scene. We'll change something that happened 3 scenes earlier that made that scene work. So it really is just its own beast. It's just bigger.
But if you're still making shorts, what I'd encourage you now, the thing I miss in making shorts is you can be really wrong when you make a short film. You can make a terrible decision, but creatively, and it's okay, because it's a short and it can kind of move on so quickly. Versus if you make a mistake in a feature, you're gonna have to live with that for years. You have to fix it. It's gonna cost. It adds up. And the thing that I miss from shorts is being able to really swing and really miss. Make it, just a wild decision that didn't pay off. But it's it's already 2 months later and you're making the next one and everyone's already forgotten about that other one. So that's something that I would hold on to in this time, is to make big swings, make big mistakes, because later when you're working on a longer scale, you're going to be a lot more timid of doing that, of failing. So yeah.
Hi guys, this is sort of for both of you. It was kind of touched on earlier, but it's worth asking just again. So the film carries heavy themes of toxic masculinity and the neglect towards women within a predominantly male environment. How much are these themes influenced by Australian culture, and is the message being conveyed within the film targeted towards Australian culture specifically?
Yeah, we thought we were targeting a really specific type of guy from Sydney private schools in particular. But as we've screened internationally, we're learning that it's kind of everyone can relate to it. We are just speaking largely towards groups of guys and what that looks like. And although it feels hyper specific to us here in Sydney, it has been resonating around the world, which is cool.
I can definitely say, as a Queenslander, I recognise that specific genre of guy.
Yeah, also in Queensland, is it? Okay.
What school did you go to?
I went to Pennant Hills High School. Which
is that a private school?
No, that's a public school.
We've got him.
But
It's inspired by one
and
guy.
ask Jack where he went.
Yeah, I went to Knox.
Ooh.
There you go.
That was material.
It's been like an onion with you two. The more I peel
That's
back,
good. Yeah, we use it. Yeah.
it's been so lovely to chat to you both. And also, I look at a lot of the cinema that's exporting from Australia, and I look at a lot of the projects that are being greenlit, and it's so exciting to see two directors and writers as well that are so invested in the project, like the research and the time and the thought and the conversations that have gone into making Birdeater are so impressive. So thank you so much for making this for us.
That's okay. Well, you can do a lot of it on the fly as well. Like you can figure out. Don't try and figure out what your movie is before you make it, because you'll probably get it wrong. Like we only really figured out, like we're still figuring out what it's really about. So don't try and have a concrete idea before you start, because you're probably never.
Yeah, you can just start. You'll be fine.
I'm still figuring it out too. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.